And we always say we've always been telling stories. It's just that they weren't in the most palatable way to the settler folks, right? It was oral storytelling. I start my class with the importance of oral storytelling as literature. And we talk about that. So it isn't that we haven't had literature, we've had it. It's just that people didn't want to read it on our terms.
Everyone is on and accounted for. Great. Okay. Um, so folks, this is our panel. This is our last moment. I hope everyone had some good reflection time. Um, I can't see everyone in the back, but I'll just keep going like this. Hopefully people can see me. Thank you for your questions. Kyle and I collected all the questions. There were many questions. We did our best to whittle them down. I apologize if your question isn't being answered, but I know that they're going to be answering some great questions, and so we're going to get something out of all the things. So I have some questions for Amanda specifically, some questions for Maria and Laura specifically, and then some general questions. And so I am actually going to start with Laura, if that's okay. The first question is for you. Someone asks, how does Aunt June's statement or justification to Ruthie that, quote, it was too late, operate in terms of emotional knowledge or lack thereof of that family?
That's a really good question. Might need to turn my volume down. Talking, I can't. Sorry. That's devastating, right? And I'm so angry at her when I'm reading that. And I think is at the moment that we also realize finally that Alice didn't know. I think that is also then revealed in that moment. Which for me also demonstrates the wrongness and the knowledge of the wrongness, right? Like there's an admission in not having told Alice that June became part of the cover up, right? And kept that to herself. Yeah, that's a good question about thinking about emotional knowledge in that family. That's hard. I think there's a closeness of emotion in that family, right? I mean, if Lenore's first MO is to like get a headache anytime something comes up, like there's a closing off, right? There's like we're not going to talk about this. I can't deal with this, and she shuts down. And so I think that's shared by her sister to some extent, who wants to be there to support her sister, and yet I think knows the wrongness, and I think also then, I mean, June redeems herself though in the extent that she helps Norma find her first family, right? I think there's something that gets redeemed in those actions. So I don't want to totally hate Aunt June for that. I don't know that I've answered the question very well, but those are some of the things I was thinking about.
Thank you, Laura. I actually, this is not exactly a question that was asked, but your response made me curious about what maybe Amanda and Maria would say. Because I think you spoke to maybe the culpability of June. I am curious about your feelings about June's culpability uh, in what happened to Norma Ruthie. You don't have, and
I've been asked this question before, so is it working?
yeah.
Okay, it is. I've been asked this question before because people are like, I hate Aunt June, I love Aunt June, or like there's very strong opinions on Aunt June. I wrote Aunt June as a safe place for Norma, because she didn't really have a safe place. But I do understand people's anger at her that she could have stopped this all from happening. But she did get a little bit of redemption in the end, and I did that on purpose because the only one who doesn't get redeemed is Lenore. Um, is anybody offended if I curse? One of my favorite reviews on Goodreads, it said, "Fuck Lenore, 5 stars."
Yes, I felt that.
So yeah, right. And I was like, love it. I screenshot it. It's one of my fave. I saved it. Um, and so but she doesn't get redemption in the end, and I think that was my way of punishing her. But June does. June knows deep down that this was wrong, and I like what Laura said is that she knew that it was wrong, and there's the understanding because she won't tell Alice, so she knew that she was doing something wrong by keeping that secret. But I did want her to have some redemption because she is the person that Norma relies on as someone to love her unconditionally when she's in a kind of a cold household.
Thank you. I know I threw you in there, Maria. If you want to speak on June, you can. Aunt June, you can. If not,
Only to say that that part, when I realized that June also was complicit in this lie, that was so shocking to me. And to think about how that whole family arranged themselves to really accommodate Lenore. But I guess it also speaks to the relationship of sisters as well, and what sorts of secrets they're willing to hold for one another.
thank you. I also that's a different question. Is I'm so bad with name Alice. I was also very heartbroken by Alice's proximity as a safe place for Norma. Um, a question for you, Amanda, and then a question for all three of you. What voice, person, or message did you leave out of the story?
Oh my. Um, Probably the most would be Lewis. I have a lot of people tell me, including the sales guy at HarperCollins Canada, who's like really adamant that I write a sequel or a prequel because they either want to know what happens to Ruthie in the end or they want to know about the dad and the mom. And I think she's given more agency than he is in the novel, and I didn't do that on purpose. It was just like I don't know, but a lot of people really want to know about their life and their history and their relationship. So maybe I didn't give him enough of a voice. But no, there is no sequel planned. There is no prequel planned.
Thank you for being clear about that. I imagine you have to be clear about that all the time now.
I have to be clear about that quite often. And I said that doesn't mean it's not ever going to happen. I don't see it happening, but creativity is what it is. So if in 10 years down the road, I'm like, oh, let's write May's story.
Hmm.
Or, oh, let's write Mom and Dad's story. Maybe it'll happen, but I have no intention of it right now at present.
Did you take that into consideration with the screenplay when you were writing the screen? Like,
No, no.
people
Oh,
are gonna feel like, oh, is there a okay?
I
All
hope
right,
not,
all
because
right.
there's not one.
This is a question. I think for all of you, why do you think there's a resurgence of Indigenous and Native literature right now? Laura, I can't see you, Laura, so it feels. But I want to start with you if you have some
Oh,
thoughts.
yeah. You can hear me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I have an answer in that I often start teaching classes in the moment of like 1969, 1970, because that's when Scott Momaday won the Pulitzer Prize for House Made of Dawn. Um, 1970, and we read The Way to Rainy Mountain, which came out right before that. And that was the moment at which publishers realized. So the answer is that Indigenous people have been writing all along, and that it's only that publishers started picking up these books and publishing more of them. And so that has increased. There is, though, a new boom, right, since then, in at least the last 10 or 15 years, I would say. Um, and it's also about publishers, and it's about having Indigenous agents and people in the publishing companies and Indigenous run houses and prints, right? And so I think the proliferation of Native Lit is also that. We might also trace it to like IAIA, right? I mean, there are just so many people coming out of IAIA, and they're writing prolifically. Um, so anyway, that's my answer. I think there are more venues. I think journals are publishing more. I think there are more journals focused on Indigenous writers. There are more publishers, book companies publishing more Indigenous writers.
For those of you who were there at Readers Retreat with us last year, we had Morgan Talty, Brendan Basham, and Julian Brave Noise Cat. And Morgan Talty talked about, shared what you just shared, Laura, just talking about like the history of Indigenous literature and how. But one of the things they said was for a long time it was like a certain kind of male author was the voice, Mama Day. But it was he did like a really beautiful survey, and he's a teacher, so that is what he presents, those kinds of surveys. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, it's kind of the same. In Canada, we had Pauline Johnson. Does anybody know Pauline Johnson? So she was writing in the early 1900s. She was like me, mixed race Mohawk, and I think Irish or Scottish or something. And she was writing opinion pieces, poetry, short stories. So you can get her collected work. So, and we always say we've always been telling stories. It's just that they weren't in the most palatable way to the settler folks, right? It was oral storytelling. I start my class with the importance of oral storytelling as literature. And we talk about that. So it isn't that we haven't had literature, we've had it. It's just that people didn't want to read it on our terms, which is why I love Noomfaming, A Cure for White Ladies by Leanne Simpson. A second time I think I mentioned it today, because she tells it in her own way. She tells it in the Anishinaabe storytelling way. And she doesn't write it. She doesn't pander to a non-Anishinaabe audience. Like myself, I'm Mi'kmaq. I don't really know what's going on, but I love it. I think it's beautiful. And every time I read it, and I've read it about 5 times now, I get something new and wonderful and beautiful from it. And I just love that she's just not pandering anymore. Not I'm not pandering. I think that may be the wrong word. It sounds insulting. But she's just writing it in her way. I wish I could do that, but I choose to write this way because this is how I like. But it's always been there. It's just, but again, what Laura said after Mama Day, people were like, okay, there's actually indigenous people who can write out there. Yeah, we've always been here. We're just putting it down on paper now for you.
My first thought was that, people they're standing on the shoulders of the authors that came before them. So the earliest Indigenous authors are inspiring, this new wave, but also that there's a new interest in hearing from Indigenous authors. Several years ago, I was the director at the Cultural and Historic Preservation Department for Penobscot Nation, and it was during the time when the state of Maine was passing what at the time they called it LD 291. It was a Maine, it was a Maine Indian history and culture law that required schools in the state of Maine, kindergarten through 12th grade, to teach about Maine Indian history and culture. And at that time, it was difficult to find good resources and good books, and now there's just so many. But I think that it also that speaks to people's interest in hearing from Indigenous authors. It's like a new voice and a new storytelling.
Can I say one more thing? I asked my American publisher when the Berry Pickers came out here and it won the Barnes and Noble Award, and all of a sudden it was selling like crazy. I was like, what is going on? And she said, I think it's a soft entry into difficult discussions. Yeah, so I think literature does that. Literature provides a soft entry into really difficult discussions. So I think people are start becoming ready to have those difficult discussions, and the literature is a way to ease people in. by reading and making themselves familiar with it. So yeah.
No, I feel that. Yes. Uh-huh. I mean, in general, yes. And yeah. Um, okay, this question, I'm so glad that someone asked this question because and I was able to select it because it's a question that I so curious about. It's for you, Amanda. It's about a character in the book. So, Cora. So Cora is the. I'm terrible with names. I had to look up the name because I couldn't remember the person's name. But Cora is the person who tells Joe that he is not sour. He's and he's driving across the country, and she's like, just appears. Um, no, that's not Cora. What is her name?
She doesn't have a name.
She had no name person. That's why I didn't remember her name.
It wasn't your fault.
um, where did the inspiration for that character come from?
I don't know really. Um, I just wanted someone outside of his family. Like it's the truth is easier to hear from people you don't know. I think sometimes, right? Because they don't have a vested interest in you, and they're not going to lie to you. And so I just wanted him to have someone to tell him, and so someone that he could believe, I guess, because she had no money in the game, I guess. I don't know. She just popped in there, and I was like, okay, there she is, and she's going to tell him he's not sour. Did he take that advice and run with it? No, because he was an idiot. But eventually he does. But yeah, so I just wanted someone removed from that situation because you see how frustrated he gets with May. Like he thinks she's wise. He's not going to tell her that though, right? So he gets frustrated with her when she tells him the truth. So I just wanted that distance, I think. Yeah.
And when you were writing her, did you because he goes back and finds her again, um, and I'm just did you feel like was that did you write that whole like the initial visit and the coming back together, or were you at some point where you're like he needs to go back?
Yeah, I was at some point he has to go back to her. I get a lot of people ask me if she's a ghost.
Yeah, I can understand that. I can understand that.
And everybody says, "Is she?" And I'm like,
So I
I
need
don't know. Is she?
I think my read Ghost like a la like Morrison's Beloved, like a like a memory of something that is walking around among us. That's what I felt. And I was like
Maybe.
maybe. Okay.
I read
Um,
her as kind of mythical almost.
yeah.
Ah,
Um,
mythical, ghostly.
Yeah.
and reminded me of we were talking about Hobson earlier, like that in the removed when right in that like that in between place. She's kind of like in the in between place, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's cool. Brandon was my first mentor on the Berry Pickers.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
In between place. Yeah. Um, Maria, I have a question for you, and then we can broaden it out if other people, if Laura or I'm sorry, Maria. Yes, Maria, I have a question for you. I'll broaden it out if Amanda and Laura want to respond. How is intergenerational trauma for Indigenous people in Maine being addressed today?
That's a good question. One of the results of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission I've found is that it's become more common for us to talk about the need for healing, that we've elevated that in conversation and recognized where some of the societal problems and issues in tribal communities, where it stems from. When I was doing the TRC work and being a Wabanaki community organizer, and we were doing these lunch and learns, and we were talking about the boarding school era, and a lot of people who attended that didn't real, and we showed a list of names that we had retrieved from the Carlisle Industrial Boarding School, and people in there were looking up and seeing their grandparents, great grandparents' names up there, and that they were coming to this understanding of like where the family breakdown or the family problems may have stemmed from. So it was almost like this aha moment, and one person likened it to knowing for a long time that you're sick and not having a diagnosis, and then all of a sudden you get the diagnosis. And while it wasn't exactly what you wanted to hear, but it's a place from which to start. And so, you know, the way that it manifests itself in tribal communities would be, you know, through depression or anxiety or trust issues or substance abuse, you know, things like that. And so the first step in resolving that is acknowledging, you know, where that stems from, and just, you know, all the efforts for healing, you know, healthcare, counseling, self-care, and just being with each other and recognizing that commonality in families, and you know that we can support each other in being better.
Can you, in case folks don't know, can you quickly just explain maybe the film Dawnland and where people can check it out?
Sure. So the documentary Dawnland was filmed throughout the process of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Adam and Ben from Upstander followed around, you know, the group, the meetings, the testimonies, like every aspect, and they were so good, like you didn't even know that they were there. But they were filming it, and we were originally thinking that we wanted some sort of documentary to document the process in case other people wanted to have their own truth commission or whatever. It didn't quite turn out like that, but it is a documentary about the TRC efforts to address, you know, the child welfare system in the state of Maine, and you can find it online on Dawnland. I'm wondering if, I hate to put Wendy on the spot, but I didn't know if maybe Wendy knew more about it or not. Dawnland, no, okay. So yeah, you can find it online just by Dawnland. Upstander Productions.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. Can we talk about books? I know that we've been talking about books this whole time, but I think we're going to have a little bit of time, and I'm wondering. I know that Laura, you and Amanda have named several books. I'm wondering maybe if you can name some of the books, but maybe slower so folks can actually capture some of them. And I know that, like, I think, I don't remember who mentioned uh, Darcy, Little Badger.
Little Badger, yeah.
And I know that book from Snake Falls to Earth, but the transcript didn't quite get the name right. So can we have a moment where we just kind of slow down and say some of the authors? So, Laura, you mentioned some people that you were like, these are great books.
Yeah. I also put together like a suggested reading list that I sent to Marcella. And
I
I'm
do have
happy.
that.
Yeah, I'm happy to like go to that list too. But let me just, I'm gonna look at it and I can read you some of them because I know that I just did this.
We have that list, but I
Okay.
thought there were some authors that you mentioned that weren't on that list, but
There are others that aren't. Yeah, I mean, I can do it off the top of my head. I think we were talking about some Mama Day books at the beginning of that. Way to Rainy Mountain and House Made of Dawn. I think we've talked about ceremony, if we talk about like historical order here. Um, and then we've mentioned some Louise Erdrich books. The Tracks came out in '88. So that's one of her first. Love Medicine was her first in '84. And I think that Amanda said that she loves La Rose, which is a much more recent one. Um, The Night Watchman is also amazing. The Sentence is recent, is also really good. Um, Her latest one is called The Mighty Red, is also really good. I have been loving Marcy Rendon's books. She is also an Anishinaabe. They are the Cash Bear books. It's a crime series. And the first one is called Girl Gone Missing, so MMIW themed. There are 3 books in the series so far. I love Vanessa Lilly's book, Blood Sister. She's a Cherokee author who lives in Rhode Island, but it is about also MMIW issues in Oklahoma, which is fabulous. We've talked about Brandon Hobson, who is another Cherokee writer. His most recent one is The Removed. And what is the name of the first one?
I was just gonna ask you because I can't remember, and I like it better than removed.
I
What's it
know, and I'm
called?
trying, Where the
The
Dead Sit Talking,
Where the Dead Sit Talking
which
by
is
Brandon
really good.
Hobson.
Also amazing is Oscar Hokia's book, Calling for a Blanket Dance. That's just a year or two old now. Is amazing. Really, really great book. Shall
Thank
I
you.
go on? Do you want more?
No, let's see what Amanda.
This
I'm
is
just
what I
gonna go with
do.
some of indigenous ones that I love on Turtle Island. So both sides of the false border. Um, there's Kelly Joe
Oh yeah, Ford.
Crooked Hallelujah.
Yep.
If you Kelly Jo Ford, Crooked Hallelujah, brilliant. Brother, Sister, Mother, Explorer by Jamie Figueroa, absolutely brilliant about colonization. I'm just going through my IAIA peeps right now because I love their work. We actually had a discussion when I was there that we're going to start calling ourselves the IAIA School of Literature. Um, but in Canada, Katarina Vermette. She had the Break series, there's three in that series. Her newest one is Real Ones, and she has a new poetry collection coming out. So it's Katarina Vermette. Michelle Good, she wrote Five Little Indians. She also has a non-fiction book called Truth Telling, Seven Conversations About Indigenous Life in Canada. That one's brilliant. Cherie Demaline, The Marrow Thieves. If you haven't read The Marrow Thieves, the premise of it, I'm going to tell you because you're going to be like, I have to go buy that right now, is that white people have lost the ability to dream, and dreaming is held in the marrow of indigenous people. So they're now hunted down for their marrow. So it's just, but do you know what? I love Empire of Wild a little bit more than that one. Okay, yes. Yeah, see? So the Marrow Thieves is great, but I personally loved Empire of Wild by Cherie Demaline. Oh goodness, I could just do this forever and ever. So maybe I'll just lay off there.
Thank you. Okay, thank you for taking that moment. You're welcome to join the fun.
I have nothing to add.
Okay. Okay. Um, oh, thank you for mentioning Empire of Wild. That's so good. But also Marrow Thieves, the ending, and I don't really like weep at books, but I wept the very end of the Marrow Thieves.
There's a sequel. Did you know that?
Yes, I have
Okay.
not read the
I
sequel.
haven't read it yet
I
either.
haven't read the sequel. But I love the Rougarou and the okay. Thank you for doing that. Thank you. Um, Maria, I'm going to go back to you. We're going far away from books, but would you please comment on indigenous agriculture and the importance of indigenous agriculture to tribal culture and identity?
Okay. I'm not sure that I can separate indigenous agriculture from just agriculture in general. Regenerative agriculture seems to be the buzzword these days, which we're all striving for, using a closed loop system. Um, I don't know. I don't really know how to respond to that. Indigenous agriculture. We acknowledge our agricultural past. Sometimes up in this way, there was this big debate about whether or not Wabanaki tribes are agricultural or not. But I dare say that we were. And we have, a particular crop that we're growing called Penobscot pumpkins that's traditional to Penobscot people and to this area. Um, it's just as important as any other small scale agriculture, just moving away from industrial agriculture um, and doing, feeding ourselves and taking care of our own people, that level of responsibility that's always been part of, our cultural values and, doing it in the least damaging way to the environment.
I have earrings right now, and inside is Ojibwe wild rice. These were designed by Tashina Emery. She's Ojibwe from Michigan. She designs beautiful jewelry if you want to look her up. So wild rice is really important in Ojibwe culture, right? And they farm that every year. And I know the Three Sisters as well, Anishinaabe culture. So corn, beans, and squash. And they would grow them all together because they've had this fine ecosystem. So there was agriculture, but we get that too. The Mi'kmaq weren't agricultural; you were nomads. But I can't really speak to it. But we get that same thing. But I know that Indigenous people have had agriculture. It's just not these big farms like you see. It's individual and caring for the land with agriculture and the community at once.
Thank you, Maria. Um, Amanda, um, this is a kind of a broader question about just writing. How did you find a publisher? Um, and any advice for Indigenous writers? And I guess that one can also, we'll start with you, Amanda, and if other people want to respond.
So I found an agent first. As if you're a writer, I don't know how many people are in the writer here writers. If you don't like rejection, do not be a writer. Because I got so many rejections, so many rejections. I queried agents a couple different times. My current agent, I queried her, and she said no at first. And then I won the Indigenous Voices Award for unpublished prose for my short story, Waiting for the Long Night Moon. And then she said, sure, let's do this. Um, so she's still with me. She's fantastic. So I got her, and I said, I'm working on a book, but I don't want you to let me publish it until I'm proud of it. Because in Canada, Indigenous literature is huge. It's a big deal there right now. Has been for about 10, 15 years, maybe even 20, because Monkey Beach is 20 years old this week. Monkey Beach, Eden Robinson. Monkey Beach, Eden Robinson. So I said to her, you just got to wait for me to be ready. So she waited and she waited and she waited like a year and a half. And then I had it ready and I was like, okay, I think I'm ready. So she put it out and within a week it was preempted by HarperCollins Canada. So a preempt is where they just throw a lot of money at you so you take it off the market right away. So that was crazy. My sister here has a picture of that day of her and I were like with like champagne. I'm like, oh my God, my dreams come true. And it's HarperCollins. I can't believe it. And then we put it out in the US and nobody wanted it. And then Mega Majumder, who is the author of a brilliant book called The Burning. Um, she was at Catapult, tiny little publisher in New York City, and she bought it. Then she promptly quit, and went to teach at Princeton. But she bought it, and wow! And then it just went boom. Once it was published here after the Barnes and Noble, so it was a process full of lots of rejection. But then it happened, and I was like, I can't even believe this. Like, wow, this is my life now. I get to call myself a writer finally. So yeah, I was 46 when I published my first book. So never give up.
Thank you. So any advice? Well, I guess that's the
Just keep
never.
trying. Just keep trying and just keep going and accept the rejections. Always, always, always take other people. Like, this is my first writing class. This is what she said. Lovely writer. I love her work, but this is a really shitty thing for her to tell beginning writers. She's like 99% of writers never get published. Of the 1% that get published, 80% never make any money off it, not enough to live off of. She says that in a first year like English like creative writing class. Like how disheartening was that? And I was like, I ain't listening to you. I'm going for it. And then another writer told me like nobody wants to read Nova Scotia stuff, so don't go to the big five. Just stay and try to get published with Fernwood or Nimbus, which are small Nova Scotia, really good publishing firms, by the way. And there's like I was like, why are all these people being so negative about this? Yeah, maybe you don't get published, but maybe you just want to write because you love writing, which is exactly what I did and do. So don't listen to them. Don't listen to people like that and just keep going. Like I have a friend from IAIA again, and I was on just talking to her just like an hour ago. And she's right now, she's got two agents buying for her now. So she was asking me my advice, and I was like, go with your gut because that's a very important relationship, the agent client relationship, and the editor. My agent asked me if I wanted to leave HarperCollins for my next book. I was like, nope, I'm staying with Janice until Janice dumps me. right? Janice is my editor, and we have it's such an important relationship, because you have to be able to push back, you have to be able to agree. Yeah, and she just sees what I'm trying to do, so I really like that.
Laura, any tips?
Sure. I publish both academic and creative writing. So they are two very different worlds. Same with the editor though. My same editor is publishing my second book at the University of Nebraska Press. I really liked working with him and have kept. I'm almost finished with my second book. So that is happening sometime. Creative work, I think, some of it has happened through relationship. I think um I was published in Zaziva last year. That is how you say that, Zaziva. Yeah, I know. It's a weird word. It is a dream publication for me. It is a fancy San Francisco journal. And I published a creative nonfiction piece in it. It was a year ago, November. It's a piece of my memoir. It is a piece about my reunion with my birth mother. It's called Tell Me What You Know About Butterflies, if you want to go looking for it. And I was I was introduced to the editor by someone who is a famous novelist I know, right? And it was like, so some of that happens. I think sometimes knowing people and being in the right place at the right time, or getting into an anthology sometimes, or um, an edited collection in a journal. I've done that too. I edited a collection for Massachusetts Review a handful of years ago, and it was their first issue of native writing in the history of the Massachusetts Review. And so sometimes it's knowing someone who's putting something like that together, and then getting visibility. So for me, I also teach creative nonfiction classes, and so that's some of my advice is, but sometimes it's just blindly submitting to dream journals and like dreaming big, Sometimes you have to go for the big ones.
I should preface mine with saying that a good friend of mine, Christiane Conlon, who's a writer at home in the Annapolis Valley, she was at a party when she met Marilyn, my agent in Toronto, and said, "Have you heard of Amanda Peters?" She said, "No." I had queried her. I had queried her. And she said, "You should take a look at her stuff." So again, relationships sometimes are how it goes.
Thank you both. And Maria, I just learned on today that you are an artist. So I don't know. Maybe you're writing something too. I don't know. Maybe. Ooh.
She's
I
quiet.
wasn't prepared to go there.
Oh, okay. You don't have, but well, all of you who are writing, all of us in the room who are writing and submitting to places, I wish us all fortitude and and luck, because you're right. The it's a certain kind of like hardened vulnerability, whatever you have to do with rejection. It just over
I
and
think
over
that's
and
good.
over.
Hardened vulnerability, because you're being very vulnerable by putting your soul out into the world, and then people are saying this isn't good enough. So you just have to power through.
Um, okay, so two people asked this question, Amanda, and I know that. So I already know what you're going to say, but I'm going to ask it anyway because two people asked this question, which meant that it was. Um, um, there were other questions that more than one person asked, but I think Amanda already covered them. But two people asked this question, so it felt like it was a burning flame question, maybe. Um, Amanda, you mentioned that when you were writing the parts of when you were putting together the Joe and Ruthie chapters, that you needed to write one more chapter to kind of bring it all together. What was that chapter?
Nope, not telling you.
Are you not telling because it's like a bit, it would be too much of a reveal? Do you want us to try to figure it out?
I don't know. I'm like, so I don't like people seeing the editing process except for my editor. So she knows, and that's okay. So she knows, and I just don't want the rest of the world to know. I don't know why.
Okay. All
I
right.
just-
No, that's legit. Okay. It was two people. Those are all the questions. Oh, that's okay. those are all the questions, folks. Thank you so much. Can we give a round of applause to Laura, to Maria, to Amanda? Thank you. Thank you. It was wonderful.